Hi everyone, my name's Dahlia. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about my favorite books of 2016. I know this is late, but I don't really care. I just wanted to do this at my own time and not feel pressured to have to do this video really early, like right as soon as 2016 ended. So here it is, my list of books that I personally read in 2016 that I think stood out to me. So yeah, these are not books that came out in 2016, just the ones that I've read and really loved. Um, so yeah, I'm just going to get on with the list. So the first book that is on my list also these books are not in any particular order. So when I say first book on my list, it's just because it just happens to be the first book on my list. So that would be the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time manga, the story and art by Akira Himikawa. I feel like I keep butchering that. But yeah, this was a great read in 2016. I do have the physical copy, but since I'm at college right now, it's not with me. And it's basically the video game in a manga form, and there's not much to be said except for I'm a huge fan of this series, and so having this game that I so deeply love in a story and art form on paper, it was just so great to read, and so I absolutely loved it. And then the second book that I have on my list is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is a young adult, no, I would say new adult fantasy book. And I love this so much because it was just even though I gave it a 4 stars on Goodreads, personally I would say it was a little higher than that. Not exactly 5 stars because there's a couple things that kind of bothered me. But overall, it was a great read. It was very fast paced. I love the world building. It was this is a standalone in a high fantasy kind of setting, but it felt I don't know, it was just so satisfying to read, and it was like a perfect dose of fantasy. And yeah, I just loved the magic in this book and the characters, and also the enemy and the villain in this book was not a person. It was the wood, which is a forest, that an evil forest, and I just thought it was so cool and so creepy. So this was a dark fairy tale kind of story that I just absolutely loved. Then the next book I have that is on my list is Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. And I think this is kind of a take on the Jungle Book, if you know what that is, about a boy who is raised in a jungle. Well, this is about a boy who is raised in a graveyard, hence the Graveyard Book. And it's about a boy named Bod, and his parents are murdered when he's a baby, and he ends up in this graveyard where some ghosts give him the right of the graveyard, and they take him in, and basically they raise him, and he gets these cool powers because of the right of the graveyard, and it's just so cool. It's a middle grade supernatural kind of a story, maybe dipping a little bit into the fantasy side, but I'd say more supernatural, and it was just so good. And personally, I love supernatural stuff. I love watching horror movies. My favorite genre of horror movies is probably the supernatural, but more specifically things about ghosts. I just find ghost stories just so fascinating. And so this book was just so awesome. I think The Rite of the Graveyard was so cool, and yeah, this book was just so much fun to read, and I loved it. Also, there were some illustrations in here by Dave McKean, and they were a great addition to the story too. Yeah, the next book I have on my list, actually these next 2 books that I have are part of a series. So it's The Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor and Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor, and these are the first 2 books of her trilogy, of the Daughter and Smoke and Bone trilogy. And yeah, I'm almost done with the 3rd book, but that would be in my 2017 reads. But yeah, these first 2 books were really good. It's about a girl named Karu. She does errands for these chimera beasts, and she collects teeth for one of them. His name's Brimstone. But one day she loses connection and contact with those chimera, and so in order to like try to find her family, because that's her adopted family, she goes through all these like methods to like try to get to them again, only to find out the truth about her past and her history, and that there has been a war raging on between the seraphim, which are the angels, and the chimera, which are like the beasts, for like a century or 1,000, no, or 1,000 years, I think. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's a great read. I love the main character. I think she's so cool. She was an art student from Prague. She has blue hair, which I think is really cool. And also the writing of these books are just like so beautiful, and yeah, like Laini Taylor's just a great writer, and so it was very easy to just get into this world, and she does world building just so well. And yeah, I highly recommend these books if you're really into young adult fantasy. Then the next books that I have sorry, are also a series, and that's The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Mayer. These are sci-fi retellings of like fairy tales. So the first one is basically Cinderella. Scarlet is based off Little Red Riding Hood. Cress is based off of Rapunzel, and then Winter is based off of Snow White. And like these books have stunning covers, and I don't know what took me so long to read them, because I owned like the first three for a long time, but I just got to them this year. And then Winter, I think, came out like last year too. But these books were so good, and I loved all of these characters, but I think my favorite were definitely Cinder and Winter. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought Cinder was so cool. She's a cyborg, and I just absolutely fell in love with her character. I thought being a cyborg was like the coolest thing ever. And yeah, like there is like drama, and like people live on the moon, and they're like threatening the planet Earth, and it's just like a really cool read. And yeah, so if you think this is up your alley, then I highly recommend it. Though I'm pretty sure like the entire world has read these books, especially if you follow young adult booktubers, or booktubers who read young adult, I should say. And yeah, these books are great and a lot of fun. Then the next book on my list of favorites is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. I think this book did come out last year, and oh my god, it was so great. So it is the first book of her new Shadowhunter series or trilogy. I honestly don't know what it is, but it's the Dark Artifices. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, I love this book so much. And if you haven't read her other books yet, I don't suggest starting with this one, because you'll probably get spoiled for like the other ones. So I do recommend you starting with the Mortal Instruments. But yeah, if you have read all her other series and haven't read this one yet, you need to jump on this, because it was so good. And I read this from the library, so sadly I don't own a copy, but someday I will. I don't know when, but yeah, I mean, oh my god. Emma and Julian, I've just been thinking about them like ever since I finished that book, and I read that book in like the summer, and so it's been a while. Yeah. The next book that I have is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I did a video review on this, so if you want, I'll leave a link down below if you want to check that out. This was awesome. Like, it's an adult high fantasy. It's humongous, but I read this book in 2 weeks because I couldn't put it down. It was just so good. It's about a war. There's lots of main characters. The world building was great. There's just so many good things about this book, and I don't know, I just loved everything about it. And yeah, I mean, the maps were stunning too. Like, here's like the map of the world, and this is actually No, actually, this is right. This is like the modern world, but there's actually like a map of like an earlier world. Don't know where it is, but there's also like a bunch of full page illustrations that were just absolutely stunning. And there's like, you know, like this page shows like the codes of the Lethe codes of war, and it's just like this full page illustration kind of deal. But there's other ones where it's an actual illustration, and yeah, they're all absolutely stunning. Like this, it's like a page from someone's journal, and yeah, like all the characters here were so fascinating to follow, and the world was just, it was just a great read. Yeah. Then the last books that I have on my list are also from Brandon Sanderson, but these are the first books that I have read from him. The Way of Kings would have been the second book I read from him. But the Mistborn, oh my god. Like, these were one of the first books I read in 2016, and they have still remained one of my favorite books of all time, like easily, hands down. These are the first books I've read by Brandon Sanderson, and if you haven't read Brandon Sanderson, I highly recommend starting with these books because they're like a little easier to like get into. Not to say that The Way of Kings isn't easy to get into too, because that one's really good, but these ones like are a little shorter, and it's a trilogy, and like it's just it's so great. It follows a heroine, her name's Vin, and the world building in this is also good. Like, he's just good at world building, let's just be honest here. And the powers and the magic system is awesome, and there's like political intrigue, and the world was like in chaos, and oh my god, these books are so good, and you will fall in love with like almost all the characters in these books except for like the bad ones, but even those ones will like kind of like make you shiver. But yeah, these books were so good, and I'm currently rereading the last one because I just reread these ones. Because, like I said, it's been about a year since I've read these books, and they stuck with me. Like, I'm going to be rereading this for, like, the rest of my life. And yeah, they're just so good. You gotta read them. So those were my favorite books of 2016. I hope you enjoyed that list. If you've read any of these books, you can leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are, or if you didn't like any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts on those too. And yeah, so thank you for watching, and I hope you have a very good rest of the day.